World War II, the European theater and the Pacific theater. So here are some major events. Poland is invaded September 1st, 1939. This will start World War II. Britain and France will stop the aggression of Hitler and Stalin. The Soviets, remember, they split. They agreed to split Poland in the non-aggression pact. So France, when Hitler turns his army toward Western Europe, France is going to fight valiantly for 6 weeks. And the Germans are going to invade France. The Maginot Line fails. This was France's insurance policy post-World War I. They start building this magnificent wall between France and Germany, and they thought that it would keep the Germans out. Can you guys think of anything that had already been invented in 1922 when they started this wall that would outdate this wall? Yes, it is the airplane. The Germans just flew right over it and dropped troops into France, paratroopers. So this leaves only Britain to fight Hitler, and they're going to petition and beg the U.S. to enter the war, and we will not for over a year. Right at a year, we don't. A little over a year, we won't enter the war. So the miracle at Dunkirk, you have over 400,000 British troops able to escape the European mainland in Dunkirk, and they live to fight another day, and it is a miracle. And actually, if Hitler would have really pressed the issue and not given his troops a break, those 400,000 might not have lived to fight throughout World War II, or they would have been in prison camps. The Battle of Britain starts August 1940. Britain is going to prove to be a pain in Hitler's side, just like Britain was a pain in Napoleon's side. He starts an air bombardment against Britain in August of 1940. This will be the first time in world history that we see one nation trying to bomb another nation into submission. They're not going to invade on land. They're going to drop bombs from the air. Never been done before. What we find out in the first battle is what we find out today, and that is you will not bomb using conventional bombs. You will not bomb a nation into submission, and Hitler will not do it here either. Winston Churchill leads Britain. Britain has a secret weapon against the Germans, and the Germans actually didn't know what it was, which made it a secret. It was radar. This saves the day for the British. They're able to get their air force in the air to fight these bombers and these German fighters over Britain, and it really puts pressure on the Germans. So, and the reason the Germans did reconnaissance flights over Britain in 1939, and they saw these huge towers around the coast of Britain. They thought these towers were for the dirigibles, or the blimps, which was very popular back then, from transatlantic flights to America. So they didn't know, but in reality they were radar towers. So they left them alone. September 7th, the Germans decide to change their tactics in the battle for Britain. They decide to bomb London, the capital. They do it for 57 straight nights of bombing. Over 15,000 people in London die in this. The British just go underground, and instead of 15,000 dead, all it did is it hardened Britain's resolve to beat the Germans in this battle. It made them more determined to beat the Germans. So if you look at resources, being a small island country, Japan will lack resources, and it relies heavily on trade and resources from other countries. In 1940, they're desperate for resources because the U.S. had started cutting off supplies to Japan because of their militaristic exploits in the Pacific. So as you see, Japan demands the right to exploit economic resources in what is today Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. French Indochina. The U.S. will not allow this because France is an ally of the U.S. So as you see, we imposed economic sanctions on Japan, and Japan withdraws and ceases from aggression in French Indochina. However, this will enact their plan to bomb Pearl Harbor. And it's going to take Japan 18 months to work on this plan, to work this plan out. So the Japanese are in need of oil, scrap iron from the U.S. They had been getting this stuff. They designed their Navy after our Navy. However, they used American steel to build their Navy, and about 81% of their oil came from the U.S. So basically, we ran the Japanese military as far as natural resources are concerned. The economic sanctions were a very real threat. In the end, after months of long debate, Japan decided to launch a surprise attack on the U.S. and the European colonies in Southeast Asia. Pearl Harbor is the most famous attack, or the most visible part of this attack, but actually the Japanese launched a surprise attack throughout the Pacific Ocean in different areas, attacking British strongholds, U.S. strongholds throughout the Pacific Islands at the same time. So despite talks of peace, just prior to the Japanese attack, U.S. naval base Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, December 7, 1941, 2,400 American soldiers and civilians died that day or soon after, and the U.S. naval force was severely crippled. Just to kind of throw this out there, 18 battleships were sank. Out of the 18 battleships that were sank that day, 14 were refloated, repaired, and served in World War II. They only permanently sank 4 U.S. battleships. So I think they destroyed 350 planes. Here's some pictures. The USS Arizona was one of the ships that did not make it. It was one of the 4 that were permanently sank. It was not the flagship. The flagship was the USS Pennsylvania, and it was refloated. So the next day, President Roosevelt delivers a speech, and he urges Congress to declare war. In this famous speech, Roosevelt declares that on December 7th, 1941 is a date that will live in infamy. Within an hour of the speech, the U.S. declared war on Japan. So we enter the war, and we immediately declare war on Japan within the hour, but Germany will declare war on us, and we declare war on Germany. And Roosevelt had always felt Germany being the #1 threat, not Japan, simply because Hitler had the resources to build a worldwide army. He had the resources to supply his army and build his army. Japan did not. So the Japanese thought that their attacks on the U.S. would destroy the U.S. Navy and lead to Americans to accept Japanese domination in the Pacific. That's what they hoped for. However, the attack did the opposite. It united the people, and it convinced the nation we should go to war. Now, the architect of the plan, Admiral Yamamoto, the architect of the Japanese bombing, he actually graduated from a U.S. college, got his master's degree from the University of Southern California, USC, and he had lived over here for 6 years, and right around 6 years, and he always told his leaders, he had always told them that this plan, if it does not knock the U.S. out completely, you will awaken a sleeping giant. And they're going to outproduce us, they're going to outfight us, and we'll lose the war. And that's exactly after Pearl Harbor happened. The Japanese knew they were going to lose the war. It was just a matter of time. It was a matter of when, not if. And so they fought very well, but they knew that this was going to be a hard uphill climb for them when we entered the war. So we enter World War II. However, the 2 turning points in Europe we didn't fight in. This would be the Battle of Stalingrad. This would be a battle between the Soviets and the Germans on the Eastern Front in Europe. The Germans attacked Russia June 1941. It's called Operation Barbarossa, and it's a big mistake for Hitler, just like it was for Napoleon. The Russians will use the scorched earth policy again, and it slows Hitler down somewhat. The turning point of this whole thing comes when his the southern prong of his attack. He tries to invade Moscow, and then he has a southern prong that's going to take the oil fields in what is today Ukraine. It's a city called Stalingrad, Volgograd today, but he changed the name in honor of him, Stalin, Joseph Stalin. This battle starts on July 17, 1942, and it ends February 2nd, 1943. And basically in this battle, Joseph Stalin said, if any of our soldiers turn and run, you are to shoot the person running for cowardice and kill him. So there's no retreat. There's no backing down. Hitler does the same thing for his troops. For the Paulus at the bottom here, General Paulus, his order was to fight at all costs and not to retreat, which is going to actually cost them this battle. So the Russians lose 1.25 million people in this battle. Actually, Joseph Stalin's son is captured by the Germans. The Germans send word to Joseph Stalin they've captured his only son, his oldest son. And to the telegram, Joseph Stalin replied, I have no son. So they killed him. So he was not going to give this city up. The Desert Fox, guys, this guy, he's German General Erwin Rommel, one of the greatest German generals in tank history. If you go into tank, if you go into the army and you are a tank person, you're going to study his tactics, and you're going to study Patton's tactics as well. Patton is a U.S. general, George Patton. So, major events here. The African campaign, Germans need oil. Operation Torch is led by Eisenhower. He proves not to be a very good field general. El Alamein is the turning point, and the U.S. is not here. The U.S. is not in this battle. This is a battle between the British and the Germans, and the U.S. troops are in the Atlantic en route to the European theater. So what happens here is Rommel fights Montgomery. Montgomery wins. Rommel's running low on supplies anyway. Hitler never fully supplied Rommel with gas and ammunition and stuff. So, but anyway, Britain wins this battle. So after the Battle of Africa, North Africa is over, where to attack next? Stalin's begging by this time. Stalin's begging for the Allies to attack a western front, open up a western front in France. And Churchill says, no, we need to attack the underbelly. We need to attack Italy. So as you see, the Allies will attack in Sicily. July 25th, 1943, Mussolini stripped of his power. Hitler will take over Italy and reinstate Mussolini. The Italians who had helped the Allies by the later part of the war, Italy kind of flipped sides again, and they find Mussolini on April 28th, 1945. They shoot him, and they hang on the 29th. On the 29th, they hang him and his wife in Milan Square upside down and beat them. You just beat the dead bodies. The Battle of Italy lasts 18 months. Bloody Anzio is one of the battles, and the 442nd go for broke. A Japanese-American battalion fought in this battle. It is the most highly decorated battalion of World War II, actually of all time. They're still getting awards.